because of the teachers union induced school closures revealed their true colors. Families saw, one, the school system didn't care all that much about their needs or their children, and two, the remote learning or the Zoom school showed families that there was some indoctrination happening in some of the classrooms. They weren't focusing on the basics, they were focusing on left-wing indoctrination.
Hello, welcome again to an episode of the Let People Prosper Show. My name is Dr. Vance Ginn. I hope you're having a prosperous day. Well, today I'm delighted to have on a guest and a friend, Texan, who knows a lot about school choice and much more, and it's none other than Dr. Corey DeAngelis. Corey, welcome to Let People Prosper Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Vance. It's good to be here.
Good. It's a pleasure to have you on. We've known each other for quite a while now, so it's good to have you on the program. And you've got a big book that's coming out this week, as whenever this is going to be released on May 14th. And it's none other than The Parent Revolution. There you go. And so it's going to be a fantastic book, and it is a fantastic book. Everyone should go out and get a copy of it. I'll put it at the show notes at vanceginn.substack.com, and then you can find it on Amazon and all the other places. Before we get started, though, Corey, let me go ahead and read your bio for the audience, and then we'll jump right into it. So Corey DeAngelis is a senior fellow at the American Federation for Children. He is also the executive director at Educational Freedom Institute, an adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute, a senior fellow at Reason Foundation, and a board member at Liberty Justice Center. He's all over the place, guys. DeAngelis has co-authored over 40 journal articles, book chapters, and reports on education policy, and he is the co-author of Mediocrity, 40 Ways Government Schools Are Failing Today's Students, and the author of the new book, The Parent Revolution. His research has been published in peer-reviewed academic journals and a regular on Fox News and many other places, including the Wall Street Journal. DeAngelis received his PhD in education policy from the University of Arkansas. He holds a BBA and MA in economics from the University of Texas at San Antonio. So with all that fun stuff, Corey, let me ask you this question first, like I do all the other guests. Why do you do what you do every day?
Yeah, I actually benefited from school choice growing up in Texas. We have magnet schools, which are still run by the government technically, but you're not residentially assigned to them. So I attended government-run schools, all K through 12 education, but in high school I did attend a magnet school that you're not assigned to, which means that school doesn't have as much monopoly power. They can have their admissions standards that they want as well. And I saw a night and day difference at that school that was actually located on the physical campus of my residentially assigned government school. So my experience with school choice kind of got me excited about it, and I'd like other families to have those kinds of opportunities as well. But it shouldn't be limited to schools that are run by the government. You should be able to choose schools that are privately operated. You should be able to take your kids' education dollars to a homeschool provider. You should be able to spend it on homeschool curriculum if you want, or any other education expenditures. I also got into this as a researcher at the University of Arkansas. My first study was actually linked to the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program, their private school choice program out there that started in 1990, to a long-term outcome, which was whether the student was involved in the criminal justice system by the time that they were about 20 to 30 years of age. And we found extremely large reductions in the likelihood of committing crimes as adults, even after adjusting for controlling for whether the student was in a two-parent household, their income, their other background characteristics such as race as well, and their gender, and also their neighborhood. So I really started linking school choice to non-academic outcomes, including mental health, character outcomes like crime reduction. We also found a reduction in paternity disputes, which could be caused by a reduction in teenage pregnancies. And some other school choice studies have found that link as well, which just goes to show you that school choice is more about, it's much more than just what can be captured by a standardized test. And this is really what's happened in the past few years as to why we've seen a school choice revolution igniting in red states in particular, where families got to see what was happening in the classroom because of the teachers union induced school closures revealed their true colors. Families saw, one, the school system didn't care all that much about their needs or their children, and two, the remote learning or the Zoom school showed families that there was some indoctrination happening in some of the classrooms. They weren't focusing on the basics. They were focusing on left-wing indoctrination, and parents wanted to send their kid to a school that aligns with their values. So now we've had 11 states pass universal school choice in the past 3 years alone. And it looks like Louisiana is going to do so this year. Their House already passed the bill, 72-32, a supermajority support. And it even had some Democrats vote for it as well. There's not a lot of Democrats in Louisiana, but a fifth of their chamber, the caucus Democrats in their chamber actually voted for universal school choice this year. And I'll just, before we move on, I know it's a long-winded answer to a short question, is the last response is I got into this as a libertarian that's cautious about government overreach. And so what better way to expand freedom in everyday citizens' lives than to allow them to take their kids' education dollars to the school that works best for them, and to not be forced into a government monopoly that has no incentive to cater to their needs or to spend additional taxpayer dollars wisely. And the biggest form of socialism that we have today is the K-12 government school system. It's about half of the total of so many state budgets. It's a big expenditure item. And there are schools that are institutions that are directly run, funded, and regulated by the government. We shouldn't call them public schools. They're not open to the public like a park that you could walk by and just gain access to. In fact, some families have actually gone to jail for lying about their address to get into better quote unquote public schools. And others have been fined for doing so as well. So government schools are more accurate terminology, and families shouldn't be forced into that one-size-fits-all system. So as a libertarian, one of the best ways to impact all these other policy areas that you and I are passionate about, Vance, I think you have to fix the root of the problem, which is we have kids learning to like big government policy in government-run institutions for 13 years of their lives, even if you're not counting college, for at least 7 hours a day. It's hard to fight back against that. Yes, if you want to fix tax policy, you should fight and do everything you can to do so by educating legislators and other people in positions of power, and to also just educate the general public. But if you have the school system working against you, you're fighting an uphill battle. So we have to fight on all fronts. And I think the best way to strike at the root is to fix the school system.
Yeah. Well said, as usual, Corey. And I mean, it was a long-winded answer, but I love it. This is exactly where I wanted to go. You're always doing great work on this. That's why it's a pleasure to have you on the program and know you and everything else. And, thinking back about, I was going to ask you about the government, schools, why you call it that, but I think you already explained that really well. And I've been using that too. I always say government schools and everything. We get a lot of pushback on X, formerly known as Twitter or whatever, but they're not public schools. They're government schools. And even if you came up with a public good, even if you said it was a public good, we've talked about that too, right? Where there's not a criteria for public good that falls within these government schools.
Right. And even if you bought the argument that there are positive externalities of schooling, which is not the same thing as education, well, you're more likely to achieve that benefit if families are choosing the school that actually produces those benefits and provides competitive pressures for the school system.
And the outcomes are going down. The student outcomes are going down anyway, right?
Yes, and spending's going up. I mean, in the U.S., since 1970, per student education expenditures have increased after adjusting for inflation by about 160%, with NCES now showing, the National Center for Education Statistics, now showing that on average, public schools spend about $19,999 per student per year. That was according to the latest 2021 data. It's obviously higher now, but average private school tuition is a fraction of that. It's only about $12,000 or $13,000 per student per year. Why not give 2/3 of that total funding to families and save taxpayer money, give people more choices at the same time? And Vance, I just wanted to point out real quick that the same people who cry about us accurately defining those schools run by the government as government schools. They're the same people who cry and gnash their teeth about Texas somehow not having teachers unions, even though the teachers union itself, Texas AFT, calls itself a union in its X bio on its website. I also shared a video on X of one of their members saying proudly that they are a union. So if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it calls itself a duck, it's probably a duck.
Yeah.
And the opponents of education freedom that are so persistent at trying to control the language, it's the reason that they're trying to do so is that they know that conservatives in particular are not very friendly to compulsory government unions who disproportionately give their money to the Democrats. I mean, AFT, their American Federation of Teachers contributed 99.9% of their campaign money to Democrats in the latest election cycle. And it's been like this for several decades, according to data from Open Secrets. So the truth hurts.
Yeah.
They are government schools. They are unions. And that's not a good argument to trap kids in those institutions. We should set those kids free.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I was going to say too, Corey, is a lot of times when I'm talking about let people prosper and everything like that, people ask me, well, what's the number one thing that we should do in order to let people prosper? And I could name a lot of things because, I work on a lot of budgets and tax reform and everything else, but it always goes back to school choice. Because I really think that is the ultimate way, as you mentioned, as you well articulated it earlier, is that if we don't have school choice, then so many other things fall through the cracks. So many more people are going to be in poverty. So many more people are going to be locked up. So many more dads are going to be locked up for different things. And yes, some of that's correlation, but there's also some causation that's going on here. And until we get control over the system to where we can empower parents to do its best for their unique kids, we're going to continue to have all these other problems. And no society is going to be perfect. This isn't going to solve every single problem. But if you could find a, Thomas Sowell, which I know you like Thomas Sowell as well, and there's no solutions, only trade-offs, right? But with those trade-offs being in the right direction, that's really what we want, and that's what we get from school choice. And so I wonder, what's your quick elevator speech that you're giving now for the parent revolution in this book?
Yeah, I go over a lot of the victories that we've had because the teachers unions overplayed their hand and awakened a sleeping giant, which happens to be parents who want more of a say in their kids' education. Because they fought to close the schools, they were trying to leverage those closures as a way to extort more money from taxpayers than they were already doing. And it kind of worked for them in the short run. The unions extorted about $190 billion in so-called COVID relief to K through 12 education since March of 2020. But their plan quickly backfired with, in 2021, the first state, West Virginia, going all in on school choice. In 2022, we had Arizona with one-seat GOP majorities going all in on school choice as well. We've even had some Democrats defect on the issue. Josh Shapiro in the midterms in 2022, right before the election, he quietly changed his education platform. A Democrat who was up by double digits in the polls, he changed his platform to include private school choice, even went on Fox News last year reiterating his support for private school choice. I think he ultimately caved to the teachers unions who gave him over $700,000 in that election. But still to this day, he says that he supports school choice. And at the end of the day, regardless of the reason for him publicly announcing support for funding students as opposed to systems to support school choice, it doesn't matter whether he had a true change of heart or whether he was just reading the tea leaves. As Milton Friedman famously put it, it's not about getting the right people into office. Mm-hmm. Milton had a lot of good quotes. That's why it took me a second to figure this one out. But it's not about getting the right people into office. It's about creating a climate of public opinion where it becomes politically profitable for the wrong people to do the right thing.
Right.
So I think we're getting to that moment when it comes to school choice. And I talk about all these things in the parent revolution, how the political winds are shifting because parents are not only pushing back at school board meetings, they're also pushing back at the ballot box. In 2022, there wasn't a red wave that a lot of people were talking about. There obviously wasn't a blue wave, but there was a school choice wave. 76% of the candidates supported by my organization, the American Federation for Children, and our state affiliates actually won their races in 2022. And we weren't just playing in the easy ones. We targeted 69 incumbents in state legislatures and took out 40 of them. That is almost unheard of because incumbents, as you know, Vance, basically win their election 95% of the time. And this happened in Texas in the primaries this year as well. On Super Tuesday, the so-called Republicans voted against school choice. A bunch of them lost their seats. We targeted 13 of those guys in the Texas House and took out or forced into runoffs 10 of them. We took out 6 outright on election night, forced 4 others into runoffs, translating to a 77% win rate against anti-school choice incumbents, which, again, we basically inverted the trend where usually incumbents win 95% of the time. So what was also interesting was that in Texas in 2022, you know this because we both live here. In 2022, the unions endorsed a bunch of these guys who voted against school choice. The state affiliate of the NEA, the largest teachers union, TSTA here in Texas, 18 of the 21 guys who voted against school choice in the House who were Republicans, they were already endorsed by the TSTA. Guess what? This year in the primaries, I haven't seen a single endorsement from TSTA. And with Randy Weingarten's affiliate here, the AFT, they endorsed a bunch of the guys in 2022. Fast forward to this primary season, they made 0 endorsements of Republicans. They endorsed 77 candidates, all Democrats. And so what that tells me is that the teachers union endorsement has become the political kiss of death for Republicans. This happened in Tennessee too in 2022, last election season. 10 of the Tennessee Republicans in the House were endorsed or funded by the teachers union. 9 of them lost in 2022. So again, this has become a form of political suicide to side with the teachers unions because they are far left radicals that are in general not aligned with what Texas and other state Republican primary voters support. And the writing was on the wall before election night in Texas. I mean, the Texas Tribune, Dallas Morning News, a bunch of outlets were reporting this, University of Houston polling as well, consistently showing that a majority of Texans support school choice, even when you use the biased language of the left, school vouchers, they were still supporting it. And right before the election, Texas Tribune reported on some polling from University of Houston where the question asked Republican primary voters, if you're incumbent in the House, voted against school choice, is that going to make you more or less likely to vote for them? Overwhelmingly, the respondents said that would make them less likely to vote for those incumbents. And guess what? That's what happened on Super Tuesday. On May 28th, I expect that there will be a lot more victories on the school choice front. And it looks like we're going to get universal school choice across the finish line next year in Texas in 2025. And it reminds me of something I've been calling all along, that the running joke in Iowa was that the Democrats should have voted for the pared down school choice bill in 2022 that passed their Senate, and it got blocked in their so-called Republican-controlled House. The primary voters weren't happy with them. They got a new House in Iowa, and then they passed full-throated school choice in January of 2023. So the Democrats should have voted for the smaller bill. And guess what? I've been saying this all along in Texas. Abbott called it a long time ago, too, when he said, we're going to get school choice the easy way or the hard way. Well, guess what? They wouldn't do it the easy way by just voting for their own party platform. A bunch of them got kicked out of office, and they're going to wish that they would have voted for the school choice bill that included a lot of goodies for the government school system last year, because I don't think that same deal is going to be on the table next year when we have a more conservative House in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, well put there, Corey. And I hope you're right. And you and I were talking about this some last year, where I was pushing back some on them voting on this, because I was hoping maybe this would happen, where we could get some of these bad folks out and pass something that's even better this next time. Although that would have been great if they had it last time. But I agree with you. I think now is time to go big or go home. Now you got Governor Abbott. You've got everybody coming out. You know the Senate's going to be for it. The folks that are coming in the Texas House are going to be for it. And you've got a big push now, likely a new Speaker of the House, whether he wins or loses. I mean, he's in a runoff based on some of this.
Right, and Texas voters are not kind to incumbents who are forced into runoffs in second place. I believe the data suggests that over the past 30 years, if you go into a runoff in second place, you maybe have a 10% chance of winning if you're the incumbent that was forced into a runoff. Yep. And in the speaker's race, I believe the third place contender against Dade Phelan actually endorsed David Covey, who is a strong supporter of school choice. I believe David Phelan was previously endorsed by the teachers union. All that aside, we'll see what happens with the speaker's race. But even if Dade Phelan isn't defeated, it looks like we'll have the votes for school choice next year. And look, this was a blessing in disguise, like you said, Vance, that we all wanted, to get any win we could. We wanted the incremental win last year. But at the end of the day, because these guys who opposed education freedom killed the school choice bill, they lost their seats. That's going to lead to a better bill next year. And guess what? That's going to have spillover effects on other policy areas as well. Guys who are more supportive of school choice tend to be, and gals, there have been a lot of gals that have taken out incumbents as well, including Hillary Hickland, who destroyed Hugh Shine, the incumbent, in a four-way primary. Hillary Hickland secured over 50% of the vote, obviously. I believe she won by double digits against Hugh Shine, who had been in office for a very long time. So, and I believe Hugh Shine also outspent her as well.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's remarkable to see what's happened in the largest red state in the country couldn't get this done, but now we're starting to see the waves change. And so it's remarkable to go along with 11 other, universal school choice. And what I always like to say is Texas should be first and not coming back. But now it's time to lead. I mean, for example, you mentioned earlier Louisiana, which I do a lot of work with the Pelican Institute. I mean, I think there's a good opportunity then now. There is a good opportunity for them to pass universal school choice. There's a good bill right now on the Gator law that's there. And so I think that there's already a good push. The governor said he supports it as well. And it's going to be remarkable to see Louisiana do something before Texas does in a free market direction. I love it. And this is what we need, is this competition of this laboratory of competition with our system of federalism to see what works and what doesn't work. And going back to what you said earlier, Corey, the government school system, which is a monopoly government school system, it's a flawed system that's run by government, it's run by politicians, and it is spending taxpayer money that's coming out of their pocket. And whether they want to go to private school or something else, that's got to come out of another pocket. And so all of this is to say is that we're leading us into the wrong direction for education. Then we're seeing what the books that they're reading. I mean, there's so many other things you could go into, but it's more about parents going back to the institutions. And part of my education in economics and everything and learning is in the institutional framework that best supports prosperity. There's a lot of good, Douglas North and some others are good economists in this space. But I think if the government comes in, sets the rules of the game, and gets out of the way, where they're not an active participant, but whether a referee, that will allow us to prosper more. And so that way those parents can best meet the unique needs of each one of their kids. I had the opportunity, Corey, of going to private school where my mom worked, because we didn't have a lot of income. We were pretty poor in South Houston, Texas at the time. But kindergarten and second grade, I went there. I went to public school or government school from third grade to sixth grade, and was moving around some. And then I went to homeschool from seventh grade through 12th grade. I was fortunate. My grandparents helped us out and stuff like that. But there's so many people who do not have those opportunities that we cannot allow this to continue. we just can't keep this going, because it's not good for the students. It's not good for the parents. And also some of the research that Corey, you and I've done too, is looking at how it also benefits teachers, because they're locked into this monopsony situation where they have no negotiating power. So they can negotiate more if they're out there and there's all these new jobs that are available. And so just to play devil's advocate real quick, Corey, because we're both all in favor of this. But let's say that what I hear a lot is, well, we're a rural area. We have no competition. There's no private schools out here. So you're going to basically give all this money to urban areas. They're the ones that are going to benefit, and we're all going to lose. What do you say to some of these rural folks?
I mean, it's a ridiculous argument. It's an excuse for the fake Republicans to try to have their cake and eat it too, to vote against their own party platform while also pretending that they're still Republicans and siding with the status quo and the teachers union monopoly. That's all it's about. And the thing that's funny here is that they'll try to say two things that are logically incompatible with another. It reminds me of the 2-button meme where the guy's sweating, trying to figure out which button he should press. On one button, they're basically saying, well, the public school is the only option, that we don't have any private schools here. But then the next breath, with a straight face, they'll try to tell you, well, this is going to destroy my fantastic rural public school.
Right.
Hold on a second. One, if it's so fantastic, you should have nothing to worry about. And two, if you have no exit options, that's not, you're not going to lose any money from your public school at all. If people aren't going to vote with your feet anywhere else, according to your own claim, well, public schools are funded based on enrollment count. You're going to keep all the money within that school that you claim is doing a fantastic job and that you claim is the only game in town. You should have nothing to worry about. But the reality is, a lot of these guys, again, were already endorsed or funded by the unions. In this primary this year, I did say a second ago that the unions ran away from these guys and didn't want to associate, the conservatives didn't want to associate with the unions. So the unions did not endorse any Republicans this year, but the unions were supporting them privately in other ways. They were giving money to a PAC called Defend Rural Texas PAC that was set up in Austin, which is not a rural area. But then two, this PAC received money from Texas AFT, Randy Weingarten's affiliate, and that money went to some Republicans, one of those guys being Ernest Bales, who lost his primary outright on Super Tuesday. Another one being Dwayne Burns, who was forced into a runoff far in second place behind Helen Kerwin, who was endorsed by Governor Abbott and I believe many others as well. And so that strategy didn't work out for the unions. I also found out with undercover video that I shared on X that the teachers union in Texas was planning to do phone banking for the Republicans who voted against school choice. And also encouraging their members to vote in the Republican primaries for these guys who voted against school choice. So they tried to privately support these guys, would not put their fingerprints on them publicly and issue a formal endorsement, even though they endorsed some of these guys before. That's good news, though, that the conservatives are seeing that this hurts their image and that the unions know that their endorsement hurts their preferred candidates. That's only going to make it more difficult for them to win in the future. And why is that happening? It's because Republican primary voters are not having it anymore. Right. They're paying more attention than they have ever before. The teachers unions have always been far left radical institutions. They've gone even further left in more recent years, but now the conservative voters are looking at these things now. They're paying attention and they're taking that frustration out at the ballot box. And so this is all good news. We're moving in the right direction. Yep. And look, the rural argument is stupid in a couple of other ways as well, Vance. First of all, the 9 most rural states in the country, as I've covered at the Wall Street Journal a couple times, most recently in an article by the title of something like Rural States Advanced School Choice. If you want to look it up, you can. But the 9 most rural states, according to, as measured by population share in rural areas, all have some form of private school choice already, including West Virginia, much more rural than Texas. They got it done. They were the first state to pass universal. And Maine and Vermont also. These states have the oldest voucher programs in the country, started in the late 1800s, over 150 years ago. These states figured out that not having a lot of choice was an argument to expand opportunity, not to restrict it. Those programs are called town tuitioning programs, and they are specifically for students in rural areas that don't even have public schools. The state gives the funding to families to direct to other public schools or private, even religious schools as well. So, and then if you look at the polls Sometimes they find that voters in rural areas are more supportive of school choice as opposed to relative to voters in urban areas. So that their legislators should be more likely to vote for it, not less likely.
Yeah, great points. And was it this one? The rural Republicans embrace school choice?
Yep, yeah, that's one of them.
All right, I'll be sure to put that in the show notes page. But I know you're always writing about this, and so it's an important point because the rural Republicans have been the ones in Texas and a lot of other states that have kept pushing back. So I think these points that you're bringing up are so on point that to allow for us to have this opportunity. And you're right. I mean, even on the Republican primary ballot, there was a proposition: do you basically support school choice? And this time it was what, 77%, I believe it was.
80%.
80%. Yeah, 80% support school choice. So
it's pretty good.
This is across the board, right? I mean, it's overwhelming.
And look, Wyoming just passed their first private school choice initiative, an education savings account this year. Wyoming is a very rural state, much more rural than Texas, and they were able to get it done. Georgia just passed their first education savings account initiative this year as well. Like basically all the Senate Republicans voted for it, and then there were a few crossovers in the House, but they had enough votes to get it done this year in Georgia. So, I mean, this train is going to continue in this direction, no matter how much Randy Weingarten and the union screech to try to get it to stop. But this momentum is not going to go away because, one, parents are fundamentally going to disagree about how they want to raise their children, and that's okay. But to live in a pluralistic society where we determine how to raise our own kids, you can't force kids into a one-size-fits-all government school system. It might work for a lot of families, and it probably still will after school choice is passed, and it still does for a lot of families in states that do have school choice. But for families where it's not the right fit, you shouldn't force them into that system. Whether you're left-leaning or right-leaning, you shouldn't want to control the views of other people's children that do not reflect their own parents' worldview. The parents should be the ones in the driver's seat making that decision for their own kids. And as you mentioned earlier, Vance, parents are in the best position to make these decisions. They have the most on-the-ground knowledge, and they have the best incentive to get the decision right for their own kids. One more thing I'll say is that I also cover a lot of hypocrisy in the school choice debate in the Parent Revolution book, where you have elected officials or even teachers union bosses who choose private schools for their own kids and then fight against school choice for others. Most recently, we've had Stacey Davis Gates in Chicago. She's the head of the Chicago Teachers Union, the same union that deleted a tweet saying that the push to reopen schools is rooted in sexism, racism, and misogyny. They threw everything at the wall to see what would stick to try to keep schools closed. They were even striking into 2022. 2 weeks to slow the spread turned into 2 years to flatten a generation. And we just found out that Stacey Davis Gates, after just calling school choice the choice of racist last year, and also calling private schools segregation academies last year, well, she now sends her own son to a private Catholic school. School choice for me, but not for thee. It's always good for them. For anybody else, if they do it, then they must have evil intentions. She knows the clown show dumpster fire that is the Chicago government school system better than anybody else. She staffs those schools, and she won't send her own son to them. She sends him to a private school. Her excuse was that, well, they don't have enough money. There's been divestment in the public school system. Get out of here with that, because the Chicago government schools spend about $30,000 per student per year. Her son's private school has a tuition of less than $15,000 per year. It's not a money issue. It's an incentive issue, and it's an alignment issue. You need to be able to choose your school. And Vance, as you pointed out, this is a win-win for the teachers as well. There's a monopsony. They don't have a lot of employment opportunities if they want to go into K-12 education. Well, if you open up the market, and if you give their employer that happens to also be a monopoly wisely, stronger incentives to put more money into the classroom, guess what? Teacher salaries should rise in the public schools as well. And there have been 5 studies finding that school choice also leads to higher teacher salaries in the public schools, because then the public schools will have a stronger incentive to spend money wisely, as opposed to being towards administrative bloat, staffing surges.
Yep.
And between 2000 and 2019, according to NCS data, the number of teachers and students in the system increased by about the same rate, by about 7 or 8%. But the number of administrators in that same system over the same period increased by a whopping 80 to 90%.
Ooh.
It is a jobs program for adults as opposed to an education initiative for kids. And the sooner we realize that, and the sooner we empower parents to fight back against that system that does not prioritize the needs of children and instead looks at prioritizing the adults at the very tippy top of the system, nothing's going to change. But once we realize that fact, we'll have more states moving the ball down the field, engaging in friendly competition in the red state laboratories of democracy. Hopefully the blue states will come along at some point as well. And I think they will, based on the defections that I'm seeing from Democrats. And look, in Louisiana, they don't have a lot of Democrats, but 1/5 of all of their Democrats in the House voted for universal school choice. Yep. In North Carolina, Georgia, you had sitting legislators on the Democrat side flip to the GOP on the issue of school choice. The Democrats are losing sitting legislators on the issue of school choice. You know they're losing voters too.
Yeah.
So if they want to do the right thing, they should listen to their constituents, parents, as opposed to the special interests, the unions who funnel money into their campaign coffers.
Yep. Amen. That's how the parent revolution continues, and great points there, Corey. And, I think that I know that Milton Friedman would be happy about the direction of where this was going, as he was pushing, school vouchers for a long time, which these are different now, what's been going around. And we haven't talked about some of the details, but, a voucher is basically take it from the funding from a government school and give it to another institution, whereas education savings account, ESAs, is what they're called, is an account that parents get to where they can use for any type of schooling they want, whether it be government school, private school, homeschool, co-op, whatever. You can use it for tutoring. You can use it for approved education services or products. I mean, it allows for more flexibility and freedom for the parents on how to best educate each one of their unique kids. And it's something that's revolutionary, but really started, or at least popularized, by a lot of what Milton Friedman did in the past. And I know that you're a huge fan of Milton Friedman as well, like I am. And so I think it's great to see what you're doing, Corey, as moving us forward into the future, so that way we can let more people prosper. And I think that's always done through parents. I think too often we're not putting parents into the front seat. We're putting government, we're putting politicians and bureaucrats in the front seat, and we need to get them out of the car oftentimes and put the parents back in. So I appreciate all you're doing. Where's the best place for people to find you and your work, and any other last words you'd like to say here today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vance. It was great talking to you. We should do it again very soon. But you can follow me on X, formerly Twitter. It's just my last name, first name. It's at DeAngelis Corey. And then if you want to support my work, now's a good time to purchase The Parent Revolution. It's on Amazon, basically everywhere else as well. Just type in The Parent Revolution Corey or The Parent Revolution DeAngelis, and I'm sure it'll pop up everywhere. The radical leftists ruining our kids' schools are really upset about the book right now. We had a teachers union executive board member in Wisconsin, in fact, just yesterday. She actually responded to my tweet about the book and said that it's a good day for book burning. So now they're calling to burn the book that they disagree with. This was a teachers union executive board member in Wisconsin, the same people who are crying about conservatives apparently banning books in public school libraries when they're actually not. You can still buy all those books on Amazon if you want. Conservatives are just calling to remove sexually explicit content from public school libraries, which seems pretty dang reasonable. But you have the same people crying about conservatives wanting to have age-appropriate content in public school libraries, you have those same people who rail against conservatives now calling to burn the parent revolution. That just goes to show you they are shaking in their boots. They are afraid of losing their monopoly on the dollars meant for educating your kids. But let me tell you, Vance, they're more afraid of losing the monopoly on the minds of other people's children. This is disrupting the status quo like nothing else in education. And that's why they fight so hard against school choice and the parent revolution. So if you want to support me, look it up.
Definitely. The parent revolution. Go and get it today. Corey, God bless you and your family, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Vance.
Thank you. Well, it's for the audience. Please go out and give us a 5-star rating if you like this. Share it with your friends and family. They need to know more about the parent revolution as well. That's the way to let people prosper. We've got to keep this going in every state across the country, and make sure that your legislators know, your governor knows, this is the direction that we need to go across America and hopefully one day the world. And so thank you for joining us again today. And until next time, let people prosper.